Hello and welcome to Guys Dealings with Feelings, podcast dedicated to men's mental health and topics surrounding that. I'm here with Jason today, and the two of us both have experiences in trauma, and Jason is a therapist and has a lot of education, pushing 20 years of experience in the field. So we're here to share what we've learned and continue to learn along the way. And today our topic is going to be, why is it so hard to grow and or continue growing, so maintaining that growth. And so Jason, it's good to see you today, bro.
Yeah, you too, man. You too. Yeah, it's crazy. Almost 20 years. I don't know, it's kind of mind blowing, man.
I know. Well, I think when you get this age, everything's been at least 20 years, and we just aren't. I don't recognize how old I am.
Yeah.
I'm still
The
18.
way I relate to what I do is completely different today than it
20
was
years ago.
even 6 months ago.
Yes, right. Yeah,
ways,
and the growth that goes. Yeah. And all right. So the topic of growth, I went out and just got a list of reasons why people often struggle with personal growth: fear of change, fear of failure, lack of self-awareness, limiting beliefs, which is stated as internalized negative thoughts like I'm not good enough or I'll never change, can hold people back. We'll obviously get much further into that. Trauma and emotional baggage, lack of clear vision, comfort in the known, external influences and pressure, procrastination, perfectionism, overwhelm, lack of support system, low self-esteem, short-term thinking, resistance to accountability, negative habits, emotional avoidance, lack of knowledge or tools, comparison with others, inconsistent effort, over-identification with the past, lack of gratitude, fear of losing relationships, mental and emotional exhaustion, and identity tied to struggles. So that list, I believe, is pretty deep, and we probably do a show on each one of those, and maybe we will. But today, I read all of those to say that it's overwhelming. I think is a good way to put it. It's so overwhelming.
It's a good general description, isn't it?
And how quickly I think that anybody can say, well, yeah, I mean, multiple of those apply to me, or how I feel, or multiples of those.
I'm going to try to tie them together.
Yeah, and maybe even all 25 of those just popped off. And I know I've been through a lot of them, and so the hurdles I face are consistency, the discipline that goes with. So if you have a rigid routine, set up to tackle your goals, etc., it can become hard to get up and do the same thing every single day over and over and over. Now, that is a pathway to success. It's known. We understand it, but it sucks sometimes. And there's parts of it that we don't want to do, and it's not comfortable. And there, I know instinctively we want to be comfortable, and it goes against that. And so, we're fighting this uphill battle. And I think something that's been crucial for me is, I'm the only judge of success or failure, as far as am I doing good or not? Yeah. And B, I don't need to have perfectionism in there. I don't need to have flawless in there, and it doesn't have to be every time, all the time. I know there are guys out there like that. I know there are men who, David Goggins, who's not going to miss a minute of his routine, and that's cool, and that's them, and that's their choice. I'm focusing on making sure I'm the happiest I can be from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed until I die. That's till I die. And that includes some things that make me uncomfortable to succeed at some things that I would like to succeed at. But it's not going to be 24/7, 365. It just ain't happening. That is not what I want. And if the goal requires that, it's no longer a goal, because the other goal I have is to not spend too much time in uncomfortable situations. Not uncomfortable in, I just don't want to do it because I'm lazy. Because I'm not talking about lazy. I'm talking about it's exhausting. It's working on self is exhausting. And I don't know. So that's where I am with all that. And I think it is hard. And I think that when we do fail, we just got to say, oh, well, it wasn't perfect. Oh, what do you know? I knew that going in. and then get start back wherever the fuck you got to start back from there, then start back from there, you know? And if it costs too much, maybe you don't do it as much.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So do me a favor if you would. Like reread the list to me, or just a few of them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what we might can start doing is simplifying and connecting some dots around what might be going on, right? If you think about it, I have not only, personally existed in a space where having the kind of experiences in this life that I long for were unavailable to me. A kind of lightness moving through life was unavailable for almost 20 years, right? For 46 years of my life, the relationship with myself has been an ongoing process. And then the position that I'm in my career is like, this is the rub of it all, right? We come and we're hurting, confused or whatnot, and want relief, right? And so, like, this concept is a every single day concept that comes across my
quote unquote
desk. Yeah.
And I think that we'll go right into that. But I think understanding it is crucial because we can be easier on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We understand
that
I'm not just a failure. And I think, some people need to think that they're a failure sometimes. I think that's the kick in the ass that they may need. But a lot of times I feel like we spend beating ourselves up, negative self-talk, running ourselves down, and we're taking everything in the wrong direction when we do those things. And we need to give ourselves some grace and some understanding that there's more going on than just making a decision or not. Now, hey, we need to make good decisions. This is not an explanation of crutches that can be used to explain why you have failed. It's just to explain that failure is part of it, and this is why. And it goes. You're going to explain, I'm sure, how it goes back to just natural shit going on, instinctively going on inside us going on. So, all right. So I'll pop off 3 or 4 here: fear of change, fear of failure, lack of self-awareness, limiting belief.
So the way that I would conceptualize all of it, every one of those, is that you could condense it down to a lack of awareness. All of it could be condensed down into that concept. All right. So I'll just touch on one challenge. Okay. You just take the pleasure pain principle. We have a built-in mechanism that has an orientation towards ease or pleasure. And we have a built-in mechanism that helps to avoid pain, right? It's part of the natural functioning of a human being, right? Now, okay, but what is a human being? What is our life? What are we doing? And if maybe one understood that the process is entirely about evolution and growth, and that, painful things are a part of that for everybody, right? It could help put our struggle into, maybe a different perspective, So yeah, to me, the way that you could conceptualize all of it is just literally a lack of awareness, right? So as a human, right, we have the capacity to transcend natural functioning. Does that make sense? Like, right, like we can work out, change our muscles, change our body. I mean, we can manipulate certain things in our experience, right? Okay. And so one of the major factors, overwhelmed is a good way to talk about it, but our culture specifically advocates, subliminally encourages the pleasure principle, right? So the concept of discipline, and when I use that word, what I mean is the ability to delay gratification, the ability to achieve a balance in your system And I would even include a dedication to truth, but mostly the ability to delay gratification, right? Um, and what that means on the deepest level is we have an attunement to the energies / feelings that move in our system, right? So, for instance, if we were to engage in practices that help us be more aware of the subtleties of our experiences, right? Then we might recognize that a lot of what is influencing our inability to make and create forward momentum is our lack of attunement to our tendency to just automatically turn away from discomfort. So we wake up in the morning and we're not aware of that orientation towards pleasure. And we have a plan to get up and do something. So we wake up and we don't feel like it, quote unquote. Right. And we're not familiar in ways with doing, I mean, we're familiar with it because we do things all the time that we don't want to, but we're less familiar with it when it's more intangible.
Subtle.
So, yeah, like, why do we want change? Like, why, what is it that we hope to benefit out of creating these systems and things in our life?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. I think that it's so hard to, when you're telling somebody it, after you've put them all together, when I say you, when a human has put it together, so I've put it together in my life, you've applied it in your life, put it together. It all seems like one thing. Yeah. I remember learning about it, so something that's coming to me right now is just how we will sleep till the last second. So if we really need an hour to get up and get ready and get our kids ready or get breakfast, a nice healthy breakfast cooked, if that's just cutting fruit up, whatever, time to sit down and not feel rushed. Instead of doing that, we're like, all right, we can do it in 15 minutes. And so we jump up and everybody is scurrying around. We're in a reactive mode. So we're in the amygdala. We can't reason. We can't make good decisions. And then we got to spend hours coming down from that. We have set ourselves back in a way we don't even realize. And I think that is the subtleties that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
And we sabotage.
We don't do it. So it's again, it's a lack of awareness. So what I tell people when they come in and they tried a million different things, and I mean, I tried a million different things too,
sure.
You know what I mean? Until I became more familiar with what the work actually entails, and how to do the work. But for most people, what I say to them is this: it's a lack of awareness, and the systems that you have in place they don't conform to where you are in your level of awareness. So for most people, it's literally a matter of like simplifying what they're trying to do. Because people, so when you start using words like fear, right? Any emotional word, any feeling word, even take procrastination. Like a good definition of procrastination is an ineffective stress management strategy, right?
Yeah.
And so, but what happens is on a subtle level, we're feeling something like fear, right? Trepidation, fear specifically. Okay. And because we're not attuned to that feeling for multiple reasons that we can get into and that we have in like former episodes, you know, but because we're not attuned to that, what will then happen when we wake up is rationalizations, intellectualizations, justifications. It's the psychological way to deal with not wanting to be uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So we don't even identify this habit of having an idea to do something and saying, I'll do it later. We do it a million times in a day, often. Dishes, I'll do it later. We're not aware of our tendency to move away from discomfort.
And in real practice, what I've done on that front, on a minute level, and we'll hear it if anybody listens to a successful person, a business person or something, you do make the right decisions every time. And so what I do is I apply that at the minute level. So if I drop a piece of paper like a rapper or whatever. I see one and I think it would be best if that was picked up, but I don't want to do that now.
You just do it.
I make a conscious effort to stop and do it. And what that does is make me recognize what you're talking about. And that is this, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. Well, why the fuck can't I do it right now? And
that's what I'm touching into.
and
And intuitively, without even consciously knowing in a way that that's what you're doing, you are developing the capacity for discomfort.
Right. Yes. And I'm trying to, that's another attempt at me trying to identify every step that I'm making and understand that I have a control over it. I think we go through so many, I did it for all my life, that we're just going through life and doing what we've been told to do as far as check the boxes off. And we're not even paying attention to what we're doing. So we're making the decisions. We're just doing them subconsciously because the training we've put ourselves through, we've been told to be put through, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that at some grand corruption level. I'm saying it as, to your awareness point, it's only that we don't know these things about ourselves. Why you don't know them? Who gives a shit? It's totally irrelevant. I'd say from hearing something like this forward, you now have a responsibility because now you have been told that it's there and you need to be more aware, and that would fix a whole lot of your problem. But then, easy to discuss, hard to implement. Becoming aware, the practices. I did it with awareness of emotions. I think we talked about it in another episode, where I'm whatever and you talk about a daily check-in 2 or 3 times a day where you just stop and where are you in that day and how do you feel and so and such and such.
I encourage people to do that regularly.
Yeah. So if in doing that, you're really being aware. You're what's going on here? What is driving this? Is this really what I want? Is this really, is me sacrificing, stopping and picking that piece of trash up really going to set me back that far? Is stopping and doing the report I need to do right now, but I want to kick down the road, is that really going to mess me up? And then as we do that, we begin to siphon through the bullshit that we've set out in place with our bad habits, and we can then identify them as bad habits, and we start checking them off the list. And we, like you say, having a system in place that is not beneficial for us, so it doesn't work for us.
Yeah, it's the conversation I have all the time with people. It's like taking a look at expectations and then moving our expectations more towards what's realistic given the state of awareness of the person I'm working with. So most people, and this is my story most of my life, your story most of your life, until for both of us it was a tragedy. It was a
rock bottom.
Yeah. Like we just didn't have anywhere else to go except inside, you could say. Sick and tired of being sick and tired. So some kind of intuition that the world that we live in, it being impermanent, there's some kind of intuition that there's not anything outside of you that's ultimately going to satisfy.
Let's go what?
Satisfy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it forced us inside. So many people, their lived experience is totally outside of themselves.
And it's so hard to comprehend that. And like you said, what it took for me to get there, and you as well, was a rock bottom. And I think it's the foundation that we need, and it's God. I don't want to be here ever again. And I don't want to be here now, and I don't want to come back. Once you get out, I don't want to come back. Like all the shit that goes with that, and it, in our rock bottom, I think that often people would say, well, because I'm not a drug addict, or because I don't have a dead kid, or because I don't, I've never been arrested, or I've got a job, it's just not one that pays a whole bunch. All these things that I'm not at rock bottom. If you're fucking miserable and you don't want to be there anymore, then you could be there. You don't have to wait until some tragedy strikes your life for you to get there. you can use that as your rock bottom. And complacency is another thing that definitely took over my existence before Joel dying. And I think what his death changed was the urgency, because you realize how short life really is, and B, the misery and wanting to get away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That suffering.
Yeah. The suffering. Goddamn, I don't want to feel like this anymore.
And if you really,
and maybe failing it, maybe I got there when I failed at trying everything else, whether it was blaming others or.
Yeah. So that's a part of it. And, I want to say and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not trying to, tell you a story, but what happens when that, you could say, seeking starts to come to an end, a mode of living, a mode of moving through life, in a certain way just is not possible anymore, So then that movement internally, you could say, is spiritual in nature, but because the movement is inwardly towards yourself, and often for people it's towards creative intelligence, you could say, something higher than themselves. So I would imagine that was a part of your experience anyway. I'm reminded of this. So here's one of the first things I do when people come in and they're like, hey, I was thinking about a person that I worked with before that had gastric bypass surgery. And one of the things that we talked about was, why do you have that surgery? What do you think will be produced when that occurs? Right. So obviously that person had an idea that there would be a shift in their experience as a result.
Just tell me what happens when you get gastric bypass surgery. What do you do it for?
You limit the size of the stomach.
So that's for losing weight.
Losing weight.
Okay, yeah. That's what I thought it was, but I didn't want to just guess.
Yeah, and so, and it's reflective of what we're saying. So the thing that I would say to people, and I do say to people consistently, is, okay, it's great, but what's going to happen on the other side is you're still going to be there. All your past and all your experiences and all your reactivity and fear, and it's going to still be there. And so the work along the process is to work to move people inside towards themselves, towards the things they avoid.
Inner child stuff.
Yeah. I mean, healing, the
and the identification, right? The learning. I mean, shit, we just don't know, man. Like, they don't teach that at school. And then men have been told to stay the fuck away from therapists, because you go in there, they'll make you crazy.
And that's what we're doing, right? It's we're two guys working to be vulnerable and honest, and hopefully that opens that possibility up for other people, right? I mean, that's the idea,
Sure.
Part of the male experience is, man, has encouraged us to just carry the burden,
right? Like a big fucking rock,
and like Atlas,
yeah,
pushing that boulder up the hill, and it's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous. It in no way reflects the natural reality of human living. None.
And life itself is pushing a rock uphill. I think our existence on Earth, a lot of times, is pushing a rock uphill.
Very dense here.
Yeah. And so if we have an opportunity to drop some of the weight off along the way, we need to take that opportunity, because there's going to be weight there. There's just no, and then to your point, mine was so crippling.
Yeah. There's no option available.
There's no option.
Same thing that happened with me.
Yeah.
It's like,
you gotta
there's just aren't, like, the typical ways of escape and whatnot just aren't available anymore.
Yeah.
You can't avoid the suffering.
Right.
It has to be addressed.
You know that. And you know it because in our examples, you know it, but in other people's lives, it may not be as obvious. And I think that's when, something as heavy as what we've gone through is it allows us to see it so clearly, whereas others are kind of guessing maybe. Like, maybe
a weird
if I
way
move,
to say something and call something a gift, and I'm not trying to impose anything.
No, I do find you have to see it that way.
and I think that you would say that word is only available due to the transformation within your own heart.
Perspective too,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Which
But
come
and
with
that
perspective.
you could say now has broadened,
Right.
expanded, right?
Changed completely.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that you have more openness, more curiosity, more experiences of love, more experiences of joy, more experiences of presence, more experiences of anger, just more has been a part of your experience, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's wild how it happens because I'm really not looking for it to be that way. I think I told you.
Yeah, no. We're just trying to get relief.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I maybe to exemplify what we're saying. So mine's obvious. I know that if I'm up and move from Nashville, Tennessee to Los Angeles, California, or Canada, or Europe, or whatever, my kid's still not going to be with us. He's still going to be gone. Yeah, and I can't go Canada. I can't go to Canada and change anything. He's still going to be gone. So it's obvious for me. But if I feel like I've been stuck in this town forever, if I could just get a new beginning, and hey, I think change of scenery is a huge one. So maybe I'm using a shitting example, but you can't think that just because you move from Nashville to Canada that it's going to change, because there you are. So I think what happens when we decide to make such a big change, like moving and changing scenery, is we make a commitment to ourselves to make it work. And then boom, we're in that same scenario you and I are in, where shit's so obvious. Like, I got to work on me. I've already changed all the other stuff, and this shit's still here, so it's clearly me. And boom, now you get the ball rolling. So I think that's why I changed the scenery.
Yeah. And I can say there's a quote, and I think it's that came to my mind. It's by Henry David Thoreau, I believe. It's the quote: "Most men lead lives of quiet desperation." That's mostly the experience here, in many ways, right? We have these dreams and desires and these visions for ourselves, visions for our life. Now, I would suggest people to slow down, let's just say, and investigate why they have these visions for their life.
Are they really yours?
Well, likely they'll be, you could just say, influenced by culture.
That's what I'm saying. Are they really yours?
Yeah. I would say
no.
So yes,
it's going to be a lot of us is going to say no.
Yeah, I mean,
but that's
part of the healing
really
process is more authentic knowledge of yourself and desires and wants and needs, and you know what I mean, and limits, and it's just more clarity. The healing process is increasing in clarity, clearness, and so like trying to think of how I would want to talk about it, because in at core, okay, the difficulty that we have with, let's just say, actually transforming the nature of our experience, right, is specifically because we are confused about ourselves. We don't know ourselves. We live under all our conditioning, all the messages we got as kids, shame-based components of our culture, the superficial components of our culture that encourage satisfying every desire that pops up,
And let me clarify, when you say pleasure and pain, can we substitute comfort and discomfort for those?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure it wasn't had to be more extreme in comfort and discomfort, because that's what I think. We're always looking for that comfort and don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I would say that you could say that like one of the ways to characterize the human experience is a process of imagining that an object, a relationship, an experience, a state will provide a lasting effect. And the consistent mode of experience here is a sense of lack, okay? And then an effort to obtain the focus of that lack, whether it be a relationship, an experience, whatever, right? A toy, whatever. It provides a temporary relief to that pattern of seeking. outside sources for an internal
Problem.
dilemma. Right. So the typical mode is imagining we need something that we don't have and a lot of effort to get the thing we don't have. Then we get the thing, maybe we get the thing we don't have. And it has a momentary impact, like a bump, like a little temporary relief. And then we're back on to
whatever the problem was.
Seeking.
Dilemma.
Seeking.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, we're back on to seeking,
Right.
So, and again, it all boils down to how clear, how aware can we be? For many people's experience, instead of being in life, they're in the future or in the past.
Right.
Constantly. Right. And so that automatically means mechanically there is unprocessed life energy that needs attention, and that the being is not yet aware and can't feel fear in the way that a human can feel fear. So they're not aware that their journey into the future on a regular basis is primarily related to seeking a sense of lack, ending a sense of lack, or fear. And until that pattern is readjusted, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. It doesn't matter. You can go to the gym. You can, it's like these things will help. Don't get right. Obviously it helps. We have a body. It's a vehicle. You need to move it and lubricate it and drink water and all that kind of stuff. And that impacts how we do feel and sleep and all that kind of stuff. Right. A way that I care, here's how I describe meditation. It's the practice of being now, the practice of being here. That's where our clarity is.
And I think, when you say it, when we get to a point where we're living right now, just now, it can clearly see that when we achieve whatever the thing is that we're seeking that's going to fix our problems, we can see that it just does something that's a fleeting. It's not a fix of any kind. It's just like going to the movies is a 2-hour check out from whatever is going on in life, or a party with your friends, or if those who indulge in any type of substance of alcohol or anything like that. It's the same thing. And you say, well, why the hell would I set goals then? And it's not that you don't set goals. It's that you set goals to fix the real problems.
You set appropriate goals that
for
are
appropriate
aimed at what's
problems.
going on. The Greeks, you go back to like Socrates and early Greek thought. So this is early Western thought. Let's just take above the temple arches, let's say the temple complex of Apollo. It would say something like, know thyself. Okay. So the reality is we are the prize that we're looking for. The Greeks knew this. That's why there was such an emphasis on knowledge of thyself. That word, capital S, self, right? And there were cultural systemic efforts towards waking up, knowing thyself. And you can take the Stoics and other people at the time, other systems at the time, they might do things like purposely make themselves uncomfortable, eat potatoes for 2 weeks just to work with that tendency towards pleasure. Growth requires discomfort. Within the Buddhist system, there's a phrase, there's no lotus without the mud. Right? We cannot get around being still and dealing with our past. Can't get around it. So people, we are this unique phenomenon on a planet that is as magical as this one, in a universe with trillions and trillions of, it's incomprehensible. And here we are, a part of that, and we don't look into ourselves
or appreciate it.
Yeah, but to appreciate, you have to get clear.
Yeah, and that's
in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, sure. And that's what I was going to say, is that the things you just rattled off about the magical place in which we live and how hard it is just to get here.
You have to arrive here
in
order to feel it.
Yeah,
in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Think about a person that goes into nature, and we're in awe. We're just there. It it envelops consciousness. We're just in it. No.
And so I think the nature thing lends to what I'm trying to say. We need gratitude. Gratitude is a way that we can force ourselves to understand that we do change perspective, understand really what's going on.
I think here's how I relate to gratitude. So it's perceptual in nature, right? Like, I know it's a bit philosophical, but just bear with me. As you and I sit here right now, we are aware. Okay, we wouldn't describe that we were aware of the space in the room, but we are. You can become aware of the space in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Where you sit. Is that true? Yeah. How often are we aware of the space in the room? Right. So I just wanted to point out the subtlety of our experience. Okay. Now, in order to be able to sense that kind of subtlety, we have to start being able to be still. We have to start being able to sit down, be with what's happening. Now, and that's going to help if you're doing it with somebody that has some, I would say experience. Yep. That's the real training.
Sure.
A therapist that hasn't done the work anyway. So, and there are many, it doesn't, there are many that haven't done the work. And that's okay. That was me for many years, and that was still helpful in a way, not helpful in the way when you do the work, because experiences are only teach you, really. And so in order to really think about it, I mean, how else will we get to know reality if we're not here? If we're always somewhere else.
Yeah. I think, the nature thing and the gratitude thing, I think forces into that. So if I force myself to stop and be grateful for something, and if we, just to get going in that, I think
I don't think you can. But when we use the word gratitude, I believe what we're actually describing is a sense of abundance, right? It's like, it's feeling that we're supported and cared for and a part of things. That makes sense? Like that's what gratitude actually is, We can feel the abundance of the room and space right in front of us, I'm not, like, this human experience is brutal. I've had brutality throughout my life and many of my experiences, it's been very dark and in some very dark places, So being able to be here has been a brutal process, right? Same with you. Mm-hmm. Here more has been humbling, right? But here is where we find our clarity. Here is when we relate to ourselves, right here, But again, one of the reasons that makes that so challenging is we have unfinished, unprocessed past information. So, it's hard to be still, and that's one of the major contributing factors.
Yeah. So you're saying that one can't force them into themselves in this place.
Lost my train of thought. So gratitude being it. So, and again, I don't want to minimize the struggle. I've had but right now, we're both of us, where you and I sit. If we were to put on a set of goggles, right, we would see X-rays, and it would be a completely different universe. We would put on another set of goggles, we could see atoms, and it's like, you understand? This is a mind-blowing experience, right? And so, in actuality, anything sitting right in front of us is about 2 billion years in the making. That's awe-inspiring. Mm-hmm. Interconnectedness of all of it, It's just that we don't have any relationship with that part of our life anymore. We don't know where our food comes from. We don't know. We're not in a relationship with natural living. You know what I'm saying? So we don't feel that awe and how insanely mysterious and complex. And now, I mean, I'm not suggesting I walk around in that, like,
mesmerized all the time.
I mean, I don't know that you could. It would be very difficult to kind of do practical things in life, if you know what I mean. Like,
right. But
I've actually experienced that kind of state numerous times, and I can say from experience, it would be very difficult to do practical things
to operate. And I think at the training level, one needs to be thankful, and that's what I'm saying when I say showing gratitude. Be thankful for that they made it as a human being, that they made it. So in my case, to 47 years old, that they got to be on Earth and experience reality, and force themselves to focus on the positives and what they're thankful for, because we got sure as shit gonna focus on all the bad things that are going on in life, and that's where we're gonna spend all our time and energy, and that's where all our energy and time's gonna go and come from.
Yeah, dude, and actually what you just, so I will suggest, because it's perceptual in nature and it's a habit for us to experience lack, what we don't have, right? So we're working to readjust and recalibrate what we're seeing on a fundamental level.
Right.
And so anything we can do, I advocate for, and sitting down in the morning and saying, okay, what is in my life right now? Water, clothes, right? And start actively looking for how we're okay.
Yeah. And and then we turn that a little bit on its head. How comfortable do we need to be? I could be a little uncomfortable.
You got it. That's the way we grow. It's a necessary component.
Yeah. Right. So I found that change in perspective, which comes with, if I see something negative, hang on a second. How can I see that as something positive, as the learning moment that's going to be, or whatever it is, whatever the discomfort is, how it's outweighed by the positive impact it's going to have on my life. And to not just look at the negative shit, but to look at all the positives, because there's so much positive going on. If I just stop, and it can start with just saying, I'm alive on Earth. It can start there.
Now, the one thing I want to touch on a little bit is we can have so many unconscious, we can have such an unconscious orientation towards guilt and shame that if a person misunderstood what the practice was about, because they're not feeling warm and fuzzy, right? Because a person's not having that experience, it can sort of appear disingenuous, and there can be some disconnect, right? But that's where I work to explain to people, it's not, the feeling will come down the road. Right now, what we're doing is deconditioning. We're deconditioning. We're deprogramming. Literally, we're breaking the trance,
which takes practice and work.
Which takes practice. Yes, it's such a habit of being oriented towards what we don't have, and what we think we need. So any practice that works against that habit, works against that message that we receive all the time on all screens, much of the time on much of the screens, is a sort of an image of need more. The difficulty, though, with actual, I would say, with like lasting okayness, you would say, like literal peace without cause, right? Which is possible and available for human beings, right? But we have to understand what we're looking for.
Yeah, and that's found inside.
Yeah,
and we're not going to find. Now, if somebody handed you $1 billion, you'd still have the same problems you have today, except for you could pay the bills. And I understand
financial stress.
Yeah, I think that there's so much connection that people, I being one of them for a long time, is that their financial struggles equal their mental health struggles, their sadness, their fears, and all that are all based in financial. What we're saying is you can solve those financial problems, and it's just going to change, and you're going to see a new set of shit you're going to blame for your stuff. And until you look in the mirror and start that inward dive, you're not going to find it. Yeah. You can keep trying, and you're not going to find it.
You're not. Yeah, what I'm suggesting is that we can be so attuned to our experience, we can know that what's happening is fear, and then we can realign to courage and empowerment and boldness.
But it takes the knowing.
It takes being still and addressing what we haven't addressed. And many people though would like, if they look back on their life, a lot of people will be like, well, I didn't have any trauma and I don't really know what. That's just a misunderstanding. It's just a lack of understanding. It's applicable to everybody. It's a universal part of the human experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and yeah, in order to be able to really develop a relationship with our true self, one element that has to occur is for us to be still enough to even begin to understand why we can't be still.
Yes.
And when a person does that, if they do it, then they will begin to understand there were things they weren't aware of that they were affected by.
And the snowball begins.
They would then see how unaware they are.
And that's
and
snowball.
denial.
And they begin to, and then they begin to learn, why am I so unaware? And they're inward.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a couple episodes we've done in the past, emotional identification and shame and guilt.
Mm-hmm.
But we went over kind of the differences in the two, where they come from, why we have them, how they're instinctual, etc. We encourage y'all to go back and check those out, as we went into great detail in those. Emotional identification being that I know that this is fear. I know that this is shame. I know what these are, and therefore I can do the realignment that you just discussed. I want to throw those out there.
And I would even add a few more. Judgment is a thing that is very heavy when it happens within our system. It's another thing that actually very toxic. It's universal. So I'm just giving another example of a subtle quality of our experience, that judging, comparing, right?
If I somehow had what such and such has, then I'd be happy. And again, no, you just have your problems with their problems.
Right.
too.
And again, I define happiness as the end of seeking.
Well, and I guess under that, then we would never achieve full happiness if we. I think
yes, the end of seeking, in the way that I'm describing it, can occur. Yes, can occur.
We're not going to continually seek.
Having, let's say, what naturally occurs within the healing process often is an orientation towards service. That will drive what we do. Not ambition, not fear, right? That's the idea. Love, passion, right? So yeah, we're still going to act and move and be, and again, a natural part of the healing process is then that heart for service, which is
what I think that's what it all comes back to.
Yeah.
It's love, giving and receiving love. That's what we're here to do.
That's it, man. You got it. So, and it's easier to do that when you see the interconnectedness, you feel the interconnectedness of it all.
Yes.
Like, you don't feel a difference when you look at your brothers and sisters in a way. It's just not a felt sense of difference. There's more of a unity, Now, that, again, is found in stillness.
And awareness of self.
Yeah.
Internal work.
Yep. Yeah. And that's awesome. When I use stillness, I'm referring
to all that.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, man, that's all good stuff. I think that's adding value to people listening, and everybody listening. We sure appreciate you sharing your time with us. Most valuable asset we have, and we understand that. We try to add as much value as we can in the time that we take. And remember to like, follow, and share for us. It's huge in what we're trying to do. Thanks so much. Till next time, have a good day.